They slapped Taylor Swift with a $1.5 million fine, thinking she'd just pay and move on. But what she did in that courtroom left even the judge completely stunned. It was supposed to be a quiet Tuesday afternoon in Nashville, Tennessee, inside Federal Courthouse Room 4C. Rain tapped against the tall, narrow windows, streaking the glass like tears nobody bothered to wipe away. Inside, the air smelled faintly of old coffee and damp coats. The clerk shuffled a stack of papers at his desk, the sound crisp against the low hum of the heater kicking on. Reporters sprawled across the back benches, some scribbling notes, others sipping flat soda from dented cans, their phones glowing as they scrolled X for the latest scoop. A couple of them adjusted their cameras, lenses pointed lazily at the empty front of the room. It was quiet, routine, the kind of day where nothing big was supposed to happen. Then the double doors creaked open. Heads turned, slow at first, like they weren't sure it was worth the effort. And stepped Taylor Swift. No posse, no security trailing her, no sparkly stage costume. Just her, in a simple black blazer, faded jeans, and boots that clicked softly against the hardwood floor. Her blonde hair was pulled back tight, her face unreadable, like she'd walked out of a rehearsal and straight into this mess. She carried nothing, no purse, no briefcase, just a single folded paper peeking out of her pocket. The reporters perked up, but not much. This was Taylor Swift, sure, but it was just a fine, right? They'd seen celebrities roll through court before. Nothing new. Or so they thought. Here's why she was there. Taylor had stepped into a legal trap. A few weeks back, during an interview about her latest album, she'd let slip some vague comments about a lyric dispute. Nothing juicy, nothing specific, just a hint that things behind the scenes weren't as smooth as her fans might think. Problem was, that dispute was part of a sealed settlement talk from a copyright case tied to her label. The court didn't like it. They called it a breach of confidentiality, said she'd spilled protected info and undermined the process. Clear cut, they claimed. So they summoned her to room 4C and hit her with a $1.5 million fine. Not pocket change even for her, but not exactly a crisis either. Everyone assumed she'd send a lawyer, settle it quietly and move on. Judge Evelyn Harper was running the show that day. She'd been on the bench 18 years, sharp as a blade, gray hair pulled into a tight bun, glasses perched low on her nose. She didn't mess around, especially with big names. She'd fined athletes, CEOs, even a reality TV star once, and none of them had blinked her out of a ruling. She looked up from her notes as Taylor stood there, her gaze flicking over the pop star for a half second before dropping back to the page. Taylor Swift, she said, her voice cutting through the room like a wire, you've been found in violation of federal confidentiality orders tied to sealed settlement discussions from January 8th. The fine is $1.5 million, payable within 10 days. No one flinched. The clerk kept typing. A reporter yawned. This was Taylor Swift, global icon worth billions. $1 million and change? She'd probably spend that on a new guitar and not notice. The fine landed like a pebble in a pond, ripples sure, but nothing to write home about. Except something fell off. Taylor didn't sit. She didn't nod. She just stood there, arms loose by her sides, staring straight ahead. Judge Harper glanced up again, her pen hovering. Questions, Miss Swift? She asked, a little edge in her tone. Yeah, Taylor said, her voice steady, soft but firm. I understand the fine. But I'd like to respond now. The room jolted awake. A reporter's soda can clattered to the floor. Another fumbled his phone, trying to hit record. Taylor Swift, was about to speak for herself? No lawyer? No slick suit stepping in to smooth it over? Judge Harper's eyebrows climbed. Miss Swift, she said, leaning forward, this is a federal courtroom. I strongly suggest you consult counsel before you say anything. Taylor didn't blink. With respect, Your Honor, this feels personal. I think it's better if I handle it myself. A murmur rippled through the back row. The clerk stopped typing, his fingers frozen over the keys. Judge Harper sat back, her lips pressing into a thin line. For a long moment, she just stared like she was weighing whether to shut this down or let it play out. Finally, she nodded once, sharp and slow. Proceed. And that's when it shifted. Taylor reached into her blazer pocket, slow, deliberate, and pulled out that folded paper. No binder, no stack of legal briefs, just one sheet, creased down the middle. She unfolded it, smoothed it flat on the table in front of her, and took a breath. I'm not saying I didn't speak in that interview, she started, her voice still calm, like she was explaining a song lyric to a friend. But I'm saying the gag order didn't cover what I said. Heads tilted. Eyebrows shot up. A reporter whispered, What's she doing? Taylor kept going, unfazed. The order, Section 19C, signed January 8, says I can't share specifics from the settlement talks. Fine. But subsection 19C2 has an exception: public interest disclosures tied to creative rights. In that interview, I mentioned a lyric dispute, not names, not dates, just a vague risk to my fans' trust if I let it slide. That's not a breach. That's me protecting what I make. The air thickened. A paralegal in the corner leaned over to her boss, muttering something fast. The bailiff, who'd been half asleep by the door, straightened up, his eyes narrowing. Taylor wasn't yelling. She wasn't pacing. She was just standing there, laying it out like it was obvious, which made it even wilder. Judge Harper didn't flinch, but you could see it. Her fingers tightened around her pen. "Miss Swift," she said, her tone cool but pointed, "are you suggesting you're covered by some kind of whistleblower clause?" Taylor met her gaze, steady as stone. "I'm suggesting this fine might not hold up under Carter v. Music Incorporated, 6th Circuit, 2011. That case said artists can speak generally about disputes if it's about protecting their work's integrity, without breaking confidentiality. I didn't name anyone. I didn't quote papers. I just said what I felt, based on my own experience." The room went dead quiet. You could hear the rain picking up outside, a faint patter turning into a steady drum. Reporters started typing, their laptops clicking like a swarm of crickets. A guy in a cheap suit near the back whispered, "She's quoting case law?" His buddy hissed back, "She's got no lawyer, how's she pulling this?" Judge Harper didn't like surprises. You could tell. Her jaw tightened and she leaned forward, her glasses glinting under the fluorescent lights. "You're throwing precedent at me, Miss Swift. This isn't a theory seminar. This is a federal penalty, $1.5 million. You realize that?" Taylor didn't waver. "I do. But if the penalty's based on a rule that doesn't apply, what's it punishing me for?" That landed. Art. The clerk's head snapped up. A reporter near the door muttered, "Holy crap," under his breath. Judge Harper sat back, her fingertips pressing together, staring at Taylor like she just walked in with a loaded secret. For a long stretch, the only sound was the buzz of the overhead lights and the faint scratch of pens on notepads. Taylor stood there, hands loose, paper in front of her, waiting, like she knew exactly what she'd just done. "Miss Swift," Judge Harper said finally, her voice slower, "are you asking me to dismiss this fine entirely?" "No, Your Honor," Taylor replied, smooth as ever. "I'm asking for a reassessment under Statute 14B, Provision 3. It says fines can't hit vague statements made in good faith if they fall under an exception. I've got more cases if you want. Miller v. Echo Records 2007 backs it up too." Judge Harper exhaled, sharp and loud. "You're serious about this?" "I wouldn't be standing here if I wasn't," Taylor said. Not a hint of sass, just pure, quiet certainty. It was eerie almost. Not rude, not loud, just different. Like watching someone play chess in a room full of people expecting a fistfight. The judge waved a hand at the clerk. "Get me the January 8th order transcript. And pull Carter v. Music Incorporated. I want both on my desk by noon." The clerk nodded fast, grabbed his clipboard and hustled out the side door. Taylor didn't move. She just stood there, paper still flat on the table, her boots planted like she'd grown roots. Judge Harper leaned forward again. "You realize, Miss Swift, you're not just fighting a fine. You're challenging how this court reads its own rules?" "Respectfully," Taylor said, "if a court can fine me for something the rules don't fully cover, then what's its limit? Where's the line?" That hit like a brick. A lawyer in a gray suit scribbled furiously on a legal pad. Another pulled out his phone, texting under the table, probably straight to his boss. The reporters were in a frenzy now, fingers flying over screens, tweets already drafting. "Taylor Swift takes on judge. Pop star turns lawyer?" This wasn't a hearing anymore, it was a moment, the kind that echoes. Judge Harper took the paper Taylor slid across the table. Pages 2 and 3, exception clause circled in blue ink. She scanned it, her lips pressing tighter with every line. "This court has discretion," she said, her voice firm but less certain than before. "But even discretion has boundaries," Taylor shot back. Not sharp, not smug, just clear. No one spoke. The rain outside pounded harder, a dull roar against the silence inside. Judge Harper looked up, her eyes locking on Taylor's, not angry, not annoyed, just recalculating. She didn't toss the fine then and there, but you could see it. The steel in her ruling had bent just a little. "I'll take this under advisement," she said. "We'll reconvene tomorrow 10 a.m. No media statements until then, understood?" "Understood," Taylor said, folding her paper and tucking it back in her pocket. She turned, walked out, not rushed, not proud, just steady. But the second those doors closed behind her, the hallway erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. Fans who'd caught wind of it waved signs. Taylor rules. Swift justice. By nightfall, X was ablaze. Taylor fights fine solo. Judge stumped by Swift smarts. Next morning the courthouse was a zoo. Fans lined the steps, holding umbrellas and homemade posters. Reporters camped out with microphones, coffee cups littering the ground. Inside room 4C, every seat was taken, people craning their necks, whispering bets on how it'd end. Taylor walked in at 9:58, same blazer, same jeans, same quiet vibe. She sat, hands folded, waiting. Judge Harper entered at 10:02, a yellow legal pad tucked under her arm, her face unreadable. She didn't sit right away. I reviewed the January 8th order, she said, her voice cutting the chatter dead. And I read Carter vs. Music Incorporated, twice. You're right, Miss Swift. The exception clause exists. But it's tight. Your interview danced on the edge. Taylor nodded. It did. But the law says intent matters. I wasn't leaking, I was protecting my work. That's good faith. A few gasps slipped out. Judge Harper almost smiled, just a flicker, then it was gone. You're on thin ice, Miss Swift. I've danced on thinner, Taylor said deadpan. A laugh rippled through the back row, quickly hushed. The judge flipped her notes, took a breath. The fine's reduced to $10,000. You bent the spirit of the order, not the letter. This isn't a win because you're famous, it's because you came prepared. Taylor dipped her head. Thank you, Your Honor. No smirk, no fist pump, just respect. The gavel banged. The room exhaled. Outside it was chaos. Reporters swarmed, yelling questions Taylor didn't answer. Headlines hit within minutes. Taylor Swift slashes fine with legal genius. Judge bends for Swift's logic. Fans chanted her name, holding phones aloft, live streaming the madness. By noon, cable news had analysts on air, debating. Was this a celebrity stunt or a real win? Did it prove the system bows to stars, or that anyone with guts and a good argument could shift it? But it wasn't just the headlines. In a Memphis coffee shop, a barista named Jen told her coworker, she stood up alone and won. Maybe I can fight that parking ticket I got last month. In Knoxville, a high school teacher named Mark filed a small claim against his landlord, citing Taylor's case in his notes. In a bar in Atlanta, a guy named Rico watched the clip on his phone and said, she didn't even yell, just talked. That's power. Back in Nashville, Judge Harper sat in her chambers that afternoon, a cold mug of tea on her desk, the circled clause staring back at her from the transcript. She'd missed it, or at least she hadn't thought it'd matter. Taylor had. She scribbled a note in the margin. Intent overrules assumption. Then she leaned back, staring at the ceiling. She'd ruled against bigger names, faced tougher cases, but this was different. Not because Taylor was a star, but because she'd walked in with nothing but a paper and a point, and made the court listen. Weeks later it didn't fade. Law students at Vanderbilt dissected the transcript in class, calling it the Swift defense. When someone flips the system with its own rules. A retired judge in Chattanooga wrote an op-ed, she didn't break the law, she read it better than we did. Even skeptics couldn't dodge it. A DOJ memo warned judges about high-profile self-representation risks, but it didn't stop the chatter. Taylor stayed quiet, no interviews, no victory laps. She went back to her studio, scribbling lyrics, business as usual. But her team noticed it, people looked at her different now. A sound tech asked her one day, were you scared in there? She shrugged. Yeah. Did it show? He shook his head. Nope. That's why it worked. Taylor Swift didn't win with money or fame. She won with logic, calm, and a piece of paper she'd read 100 times. She walked into a room stacked against her and said, here's what you missed. And the room had to listen. That's not just a story, it's a spark. Proof that knowing your ground, speaking clear, and standing firm can bend even the toughest systems. Not with noise, not with drama, just truth. If that hits you, if it makes you wonder what you could challenge with the right words, stick around. We've got more stories coming. Ones that shake you, lift you, and stick with you long after the lights go out. Hit subscribe. Let's keep this going.